Spanning more than 6.3 million square miles, Russia is the largest country in the world. This vast area gives archaeologists plenty of space to explore. From unexplained marks to the blackbird of Chernobyl, here are 20 mysterious findings in Russia that no one can explain. Number 20. Revival of ancient Siberian zombie virus. In 2022, Siberian researchers revealed a somewhat worrisome discovery. That year, their research centered on reviving a 48,500-year-old zombie virus that remained dormant in Siberian permafrost. With its age, it's now known as the most ancient virus that has been revived so far. And yes, researchers claim that it could threaten public health. Not the revival, but the thawing of the permafrost, which could possibly unleash a lot of unwanted things on the rest of our planet. Permafrost is akin to a large freezer that keeps microbes, carbon, bacteria, methane, and other gases locked in. We've discovered different extinct species thanks to this frozen expanse that covers about 25% of our planet's northern hemisphere. While we are eager to learn everything about our planet, I don't think reviving a virus is in our best interest. Now, before you believe this microorganism is connected to the undead due to its name, let me tell you that that's not the case. It was dubbed as zombie virus because it came back to life after being frozen for so long. So what's the verdict? While this virus is horrifying on paper, in reality it only targets amoebas, tiny single-celled organisms, and not humans or animals. But again, the real worry here is what else might be locked in that ice. We've been okay so far, so perhaps there's no need for us to worry quite yet. Number 19. Ancient Siberian rituals unearthed. Did you know that in Mexico City, there is a tower constructed out of hundreds of human skulls? In ancient Egypt, forced labor and death were standard punishments for convicted felons, and in the Roman Empire, aside from insane and cruel emperors, religious persecutions, and believing that the victor and the strong were allowed to do whatever they wanted, they also had a penchant for watching people fight to the death for fun. All I'm saying is that past civilizations all had their grim practices that would definitely break several, if not all, human rights policies that we have in place today. The Scythians that once roamed ancient Siberia were no different. In 1968, archaeologists led by Soviet professor Anatoly Martinov discovered the charred remains of over a dozen people in Meninku, in the mountains of South Siberia. At a site believed to belong to Siberia's Bronze Age Tagar culture were eerie, mysterious clay heads. Their appearance isn't what horrified archaeologists. Instead, it was what's inside these clay heads. Although unopened, X-ray imaging of the head revealed a ram skull embedded deep inside. The Tagar are among the best-studied groups of the Eastern Scythian cultures. They're known for their grand burials, usually laden with golden jewelry and ornaments. These graves are spread throughout the Eurasian steppe. Aside from their burial rituals, however, there's not much known about their other practices. To this day, archaeologists are still puzzled as to why the skull was embedded in human clay heads in the first place. Number 18. The legend of the well to hell. Do you believe in the existence of hell? We all have our own beliefs, but when it comes to creepypasta and scary stories, reality and fiction seem to blur together. That's why, regardless of most people's view about whether the fiery land of the devil exists beneath our feet, they're still terrified upon hearing about the well to hell. This story dates back to 1989 and took place in the cold expanse of Siberia. It was a period of scientific advancement, and in the pursuit of unraveling the composition of our own planet, Soviet scientists drilled a deep hole that soon reached over 9 miles deep. The research yielded data about the Earth's composition, but the project was halted for an unknown reason, and scientists immediately sealed the hole they drilled. The reason? They unintentionally discovered, or rather drilled, their own well that leads to hell. The story goes that while drilling, scientists heard agonizing screams and wails of anguish from deep within the hole. Lowering a heat-resistant microphone, they amplified the sound, and chills immediately ran down their spines. Thousands, if not millions, of souls screaming in a cacophony of pain. This led to the decision that the hole should be sealed. However, before this nightmare could end, a demonic apparition revealed itself, emerging from the hole and exclaiming, "I have conquered." It's a story that would keep many awake at night, but is there any reality to this? The verdict is out on this one, but it is indeed confirmed that the deepest hole drilled into our planet exists in the icy expanse of Siberia, the Kola Superdeep Borehole. It measures a staggering 7.6 miles into the Earth's surface and took 20 years for this hole to reach its depth. Today, this Kola borehole's history soon became intertwined with the story of the well to hell. But who knows? Perhaps there's some truth to this story. Number 17. Mysterious alien body found in snow. There's no question that people are interested in anything concerning extraterrestrial creatures. It's no wonder that news about this alleged alien immediately spread online. It began in 2011 when locals stumbled upon an alien body lying lifeless in the snow. News about the extraterrestrial immediately spread online. Skeptics were also quick to jump in, claiming that rather than a creature that came from outside our planet, the being lying on the snow was a hoax created by locals, perhaps by the person who spread the news about it in the first place. A hoax or a discovery that could change everything. With no more news about this mysterious discovery, we can only speculate for now. Number 16. Fort Zverev, From Stronghold to Ruins. On the shores of the Baltic Sea, near the town of Kronstadt, lies an eerie fortress built in the 1870s under the orders of Peter the Great. Fort Zverev was constructed to protect the area from naval and enemy forces. This mighty structure was named after the engineer behind much of its construction, Mel Zverev. Although it remained a stronghold for years, one incident changed it all. In the 1970s, a fire caused by an accident involving stored napalm-like substances resulted in an inferno that lasted for several weeks. The intense heat from the fire melted the brick and concrete structure of the fort. From a mighty structure, Fort Zverev was reduced to an eerie ruin. The walls and ceilings are warped and twisted, with molten structures that earn the fort its reputation for being the scariest and eeriest ruins on the planet. Today, Fort Zverev is not maintained and lies abandoned, slowly being reclaimed by nature. Its accessibility varies with the seasons and local regulations, so for those who are curious and brave enough, and with enough means to visit, the ruins of Fort Zverev stand as a somber reminder of history. Number 15. The Russian Sleep Experiment Horror. Have you heard about the Russian sleep experiment? Well, if you haven't, buckle up. This is among the most chilling stories that allegedly took place in Russia. Keyword, allegedly. As I've mentioned earlier, there was a time when the Soviet Union and the rest of the world had a race to have the most breakthroughs in science, medicine, space exploration, everything. And while many of these experiments and studies yielded something good, some experiments were too grim to be considered ethical. This includes the Russian sleep experiment that allegedly occurred in the late 1940s, sometime after World War II. According to the tale, Soviet researchers experimented on 5 political prisoners. These prisoners were kept in a sealed glass chamber where an experimental stimulant gas was administered to keep them awake for 30 consecutive days. So far, the longest confirmed time that someone went without sleep is about 264 hours or 11 days straight, by Randy Gardner. With just 11 days without sleep, memory loss, paranoia, and loss of concentration were experienced by the subject. So, what would happen if someone stayed up for 30 consecutive days? Well, in the Russian sleep experiment, prisoners were promised a reward if they survived the experiment, their freedom. As days passed, the effects of sleep deprivation began to take horrifying turns. Initially, the subjects stopped talking to each other and then started whispering to the researchers through the microphones, slowly descending into paranoia and madness. Now, I won't disclose the rather grim part of the story. Let's just say that in the end, the subjects turned into something barely human. They were resistant to sleeping and begged to be kept awake. It seems that the only thing between sanity and descent into madness is the respite we get while we sleep. Well, I'm going to bed with the lights on tonight. Number 14. Cold War Relic, Bunker 42 unveiled. The 1950s were marked by extreme paranoia due to nuclear attacks and war. This period of history led to the construction of Bunker 42, also known as Tagansky Protected Command Point, nestled about 213 feet below the bustling streets of Moscow. Much about the horrid past of mankind can be erased, but remnants will always remain. People who search for traces of mankind's dark past visit this forgotten bunker, originally constructed under the guise of an ordinary urban development project. The 75,000-square-foot bunker served as a stronghold that could protect up to 2,500 people for up to 90 days without any contact with the outside world. Bunker 42 is entirely self-contained, with its own power generation system, air filtration, and water supply, with walls that are 6 feet thick. The bunker was built and designed to protect its inhabitants from the blast of a nuclear explosion. Despite being a stronghold that remains to this day, the bunker is a time capsule of the Cold War mindset. Inside, you'll find everything from communication rooms filled with old Soviet telephones and telegraph machines to strategic maps still hanging on the walls, illustrating potential targets and military tactics. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the existence of Bunker 42 was no longer a state secret, and it was eventually transformed. Today, it serves a new purpose as a museum and a historical site. Visitors can tour through its extensive tunnel system, experiencing a slice of life from when the threat of nuclear war loomed worldwide. Number 13. Dargavs, City of the Dead. Dargavs. There's a reason why this village, nestled in the Caucasus Mountains of northern Ossetia, earned its eerie title, City of the Dead. Dargavs is incredibly remote, and even from afar, it looks like the ruins of a village that flourished a long time ago. However, it's far from that. Dargavs is the City of the Dead. This place is an acropolis consisting of nearly 100 ancient stone crypts where the locals have been burying their dead for centuries. These crypts, some of which date back to the 16th century, are built into the hillside, and each one tells a story of the families who have lived in the valley. They're built from local stone and designed with pitched roofs, somewhat resembling small houses. This design is unique to North Ossetian burial practices, where families constructed a crypt for each new deceased relative. Aside from being the resting place of several people, there are also tales about how during times of plague, the sick and dying would come to these crypts to wait for death, isolating themselves to protect their families from the spread of disease. They would bring their favorite belongings, which you can still see in some crypts today. With many anguished souls gathering in one place, it's not surprising that many believe this necropolis is haunted. Number 12. Creepy red-eyed creature spotted in Russia. Among the many alleged hotspots of alien activity is Russia. This country encompasses more than 1/8 of the planet's inhabited land area, but at the same time, a large portion of the country is uninhabitable because of permafrost. These barren pieces of land allegedly attract extraterrestrial creatures. In 2019, a strange alien creature was filmed in an abandoned subway station. In this photo, you can see a dark-colored mound on the ground, and from it rose a creature akin to a snake, with glistening red eyes. People on the internet claimed that the creature was precisely what it looked like, a snake. However, the person who posted the clip and the photos insisted that it was unlike any creature he had ever seen before. Fortunately, he didn't obtain any other photos, as he claimed he fled the site due to the unknown creature. Number 11. Lake Karachay, the radioactive burial ground. Lake Karachay is a small lake in the southern Ural Mountains of Russia, near the city of Chelyabinsk. If you look it up online, you might see beautiful and picturesque photos of said lake, but it won't be long until you read about the horrifying things that revolve around this lake. As they say, looks can be deceiving, as this lake's history and contents are far from serene. You see, during the Cold War, the Soviet Union used the lake as a dumping site for radioactive waste from Mayak, one of the largest and leakiest nuclear facilities in Russia. From the 1950s onward, Mayak was central in Soviet nuclear weapons production, and it had a history marked by several atomic accidents and routine disposal of radioactive waste into the environment. Unfortunately, Lake Karachay was among the bodies of water chosen to be the dump site for high-level radioactive waste. The contamination was so severe that by the 1960s, the lake was emanating radiation at levels high enough to deliver a lethal dose just after an hour of exposure. Being close to this lake was considered dangerous, and in 1967, this body of water got worse. Drought hit the land and reduced the water level of the lake. Seems like a good thing, right? Less water means less radiation. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Radioactive material doesn't just disappear but rather moves, and so when the lake's water level decreased, wind carried radioactive dust from the dried lake bed to surrounding areas, making matters worse, much worse. This led to hundreds of thousands of people being exposed to dangerous radiation levels. To mitigate the disaster and prevent the further spread of radioactive material, Russian authorities decided to fill the lake with concrete blocks and soil to bury the radioactive material under layers of earth. By the 2010s, the lake was filled in, transforming what was once a body of water into a radioactive burial ground. Yes, it's still radioactive, but at least it isn't as lethal as it once was. Number 10. Wolfish with human-like teeth. The vast expanse of Russia's land isn't the only thing hiding creepy secrets. A traveler named Roman Fedorov, who devoted much of his life searching for the strangest marine creatures, revealed this creepy fish he caught in Murmansk, in the northwestern region of Russia. How would you react if you came face to face with this fish while swimming underwater? I know that I'd freak out. This black and gray-spotted fish was among the most monstrous creatures he discovered in the icy waters of the region, and people online seemed to agree. Fedorov identified this creature as a wolfish, one with teeth that are uncannily similar to what humans have. In general, wolfishes are giant creatures, most growing up to 8 feet long and weighing up to 40 pounds. Their heads are large with powerful jaws and strong canine-like teeth, perfect for crushing their favorite foods like sea urchins, crabs, and snails. No wonder these creatures are deemed one of the most monstrous marine creatures to exist. Number 9. Fallen angel statue unearthed by miners. Now, perhaps you know about weeping angels. If you don't, let me fill you in. Made famous by a classic television series, these angel statues, or weeping angels, common in cemeteries all over Europe and the Americas, are portrayed as interdimensional beings of great terror who can move when no one is watching them. Quite unsettling, don't you think? So, imagine the shock felt by Russian miners who allegedly discovered this fallen angel statue while drilling in the Sakha Republic, located in the far east portion of Russia. The said angel statue was adorned with a robe and was wielding a sword and shield, along with a pair of massive wings on its back. It's quite a terrifying and intimidating figure. Well, perhaps this is just another random thing discovered in the country by the locals. Number 8. Yakutsk. Life in the world's coldest city. Nestled just 300 miles south of the Arctic Circle is Yakutsk, Russia. With a population of over 300,000 as of 2022, this city is known as the coldest in the world. In this place, a typical winter day can easily dip as low as -84 degrees Fahrenheit, but when summer comes, the region is so hot that the entire place is filled with mosquitoes. It's both astounding and humbling to think that some people have learned to adapt to live in such an extreme environment. For most people from the city, living in Yakutsk seems like a terrifying and challenging feat. Houses and buildings here are built on stilts, preventing them from melting the permafrost. Water and gas lines are raised above ground instead of being embedded. But perhaps the most horrifying thing for most people is that, aside from WhatsApp and a handful of other social media sites, the internet here is limited to what's happening in the locality alone. After all, the internet in Yakutsk costs around 2,000 rubles, which at the time was about $65, a significant figure to pay. So, staying in tune and keeping up with the rest of the community was usually enough for people in Yakutsk. Do you also think the same? I'd probably survive here for a week or two before I'd miss the city's convenience. But what do you think? Number 7. Ferocious Settlers of the Arctic. Polar bears are cute, they're adorable, but there's a reason why we don't live amongst them. And no, it's not only because they live in extreme environments most people wouldn't survive. A single adult polar bear can easily take down 5 or more unarmed men. No wonder photographer Dmitry approached this abandoned house in the Russian Arctic where polar bears decided to remain. I also wouldn't want to be chased or get on the wrong side of a 4-legged death machine. Number 6. Norilsk City at the Edge of the World. The City at the Edge of the World. This seems like a terrifying title for a place rather than a real place. It sounds like something you'd read about in a dystopian novel. However, this title has been given to Norilsk, the city of extreme cold and pollution. And yet, somehow, over 170,000 people still choose to remain here. Nestled above the Arctic Circle, this city is one of the northernmost inhabited cities in the world. However, in this place, the typical rules seem to be ignored. This place is isolated for a reason. In this city, no tourists are allowed, and it's built on the ruins of a forced labor camp. For almost 3 months, people here see no daylight, and in the months of June and July, there's no night. And yet, why do people remain? Well, it's pretty simple: metal. This city sits on top of the most valuable metal deposits in the world, palladium, with a price point of over $1,500 an ounce. It's no wonder that people sacrifice many things to stay here. Now it's time for today's topic. What a camera captures in Russia shocked the whole world. A man was exploring yet another uninhabited region of Siberia using his drone when he spotted a figure moving amidst the trees. He was horrified by what he saw. A woman, or rather, something that looked like a woman. He claimed that upon retrieving the drone, this blurry photo remained. He shared, however, that this being wasn't a real person, rather a cryptid that was only pretending to be one. Now, there are a lot of horrific stories taking place in Russia. After all, it's a place where most regions are uninhabited, so I'll let you be the judge on this one. Number 5. Plan to clone ancient Scythian warriors. Perhaps some of you have already heard about this, but just a few years ago, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu announced plans to clone 3,000-year-old Scythian warriors discovered in the Republic of Tuva. Now, before anything else, the only successful being we've cloned is a sheep, and so far, no other successful cloning experiments have been carried out. But let me tell you about the Scythians first. Dating back to around 900 BCE to 200 BCE, the Scythians were a group of ancient tribes known for their skills in battle, particularly their horseback archery. They roamed the steppes of what is now Ukraine, southern Russia, and parts of Asia. Historically, they were known as formidable opponents who mastered warfare. The Russian defense minister has outlined a plan that involves extracting DNA from Scythian remains, which have been preserved in permafrost and other burial sites. The goal? To recreate the Scythian warriors through cloning technology, presumably to harness their legendary military tactics. But cloning a single sheep was a formidable feat already. While it's creepy to imagine, we don't have anything to worry about since cloning is still a very questionable and relatively unexplored field of science. Number 4. Oymyakon, the Pole of Cold. Known as the Pole of Cold, Oymyakon, Russia, is a remote village with temperatures reaching bone-chilling lows of -50 degrees Celsius. In this village, fish can be eaten raw because they're frozen anyway. The lowest temperature ever recorded in this village was a spine-chilling -71.2 degrees Celsius below zero. That's -96.16 degrees Fahrenheit. It can be quite challenging to live in such a community. A run to the loo can be a hard feat as pipes get broken. So bathroom runs mean you'd have to endure the cold, and if you want to keep your car alive, you'd need a heated garage for that. But behind the seemingly lively village that continues to brave extreme temperatures is a population that is slowly declining. With no other means of business other than fur trading and ice fishing, the population of Oymyakon has significantly shrunk over the years. At its peak, it had a population of roughly 2,500 inhabitants, but that number has dwindled to fewer than 900, or even around 500 as of 2018. Number 3. Discovery of ancient Amazon warrior burial. In 2020, archaeologists for the first time ever discovered not one, but 3 generations of ancient Amazon women buried in a single tomb in present-day Russia. Among the remains of about 11 young women were weapons, horses, and artifacts that signify high status and honor. These women were identified as Scythian Amazons, people who occupied the area 2,500 years ago. These people were known not only for their combat skills, but also for horseback riding. Even women in their society showed just how fearsome and developed they were. While mummies and human remains are always creepy, the significance of this find surpasses that. You see, this is the first time such a discovery was made. Archaeologists discovered the remains of a young woman, possibly in her early 20s, alongside middle-aged and older women, all equipped with weapons and adorned with decorations that symbolize their warrior status. The artifacts found with them, such as arrowheads, spears, and horse gear, tell us that these women were not merely ceremonial fighters but were likely engaged in actual combat. This discovery reveals a lot about the gender roles in ancient society, a subject that, more often than not, is misunderstood. Number 2. Mysterious formation, the Padam crater. The Padam crater, also known as the Pomsky crater, is an enigmatic formation first discovered in 1949 by a Soviet geologist named Ivan Karpov. It measures about 520 feet in diameter and about 130 feet high. It doesn't look like anything from this planet. We don't know precisely how long it's been in the uninhabited expanse of southeastern Siberia, and we also don't know how it formed. Experts believe that it might have resulted from a volcanic eruption, given that the crater is made mostly of shattered limestone and sandstone, materials uncommon in meteorite impacts. The possibility of a meteorite origin cannot be ruled out due to its size and depth. For many, this location embodies an eerie and alien landscape, where human presence feels out of place. Number 1. Chernobyl Disaster and the Blackbird Legend. April 26, 1986, in the early morning, something went terribly wrong at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Pripyat, Ukraine, which was then part of the Soviet Union. A fatal error that would forever tarnish that year in the history of mankind. The night before, a safety test was performed in the nuclear power plant's reactor 4. The test was only meant to simulate a power outage to ensure it could safely shut down, and backup generators were still operational. Instead, due to a combination of reactor design flaws and operator error, disaster struck. At exactly 1:23 a.m., Reactor 4 exploded, releasing approximately 400 times more radioactive material than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The explosion was not a nuclear explosion, but a steam explosion followed by a fire, which spewed toxic radioactive particles into the atmosphere. These particles drifted over much of Europe, contaminating the air and the ground. The immediate aftermath was horrific. 2 plant workers died on the night of the explosion, and dozens more succumbed to acute radiation sickness in the following weeks. The town of Pripyat, home to 49,000 people and just 3 kilometers from the reactor, was evacuated 36 hours after the explosion. The residents left, believing they'd be back in a few days. They never returned. In the fallout zone, a 30 kilometers radius known as the exclusion zone was established. This area remains one of the most radioactively contaminated places on Earth, where human habitation is restricted. While this entire narrative seems like it was caused by unfortunate timing and technical error, some believed that there was a culprit behind this disaster, namely the Blackbird of Chernobyl. You see, residents near the plant weren't immediately alerted by the scale of damage done by Reactor 4. Several locals who didn't immediately flee reported seeing a human-like creature with massive black wings and sinister red eyes lingering around the reactor before and during the disaster. This alleged monster was said to be the one responsible for the deaths and damage done by the nuclear explosion. Based solely on eyewitness accounts, the legend of the Blackbird of Chernobyl is met with skepticism. However, for those who claim to have seen it, the creature is said to still lurk in the vicinity of the disaster site, perhaps even waiting to herald the next catastrophe as a bearer of misfortune. Perhaps I've missed other discoveries. If that's the case, feel free to share them in the comments down below. Also check out our other cool videos showing up on the screen right now, and I'll see you in the next video.